fish.
Coucou, équipe technique, est-ce que ça va pour le streaming? Martin, tu penses qu'on peut démarrer? Ouais, c'est bon, ok, d'accord. Bonjour à tous. On va commencer par le refuge, esprit d'éveil et une louange à Manjushri. Sangye chetam sangye chonam la janchu partu thani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gi pe sanam ki chola penchir sangye rupar shoy sangye chetam sangye chonam la janchu partu thani kyapsu chi Tagi jinso ki pe sanam ki chola penchir sangye drupai shoy sangye chetan soki choknam la janchu partu thani kyapsu chi Tagi jinso ki pe sanam ki chola penchir sangye drupai shoy semchala nepar gyun chin chomdende champeyan la chatselom Kangi lo dribne chinjel nitar namda grabselwem Jinye den kunzi shizik shir niki tukar lek bamzim Kandak si petserar marik muntundung el gizirwem Chotso kula buchi tansen yan lag druju yan tensung Chuta chadron yamon yelong leki chadron dresen Marig munsel dungel nyugu chinye chadzerel jinam Tene tachu sachu tarsan yanten luzo gyalse tuwekum Chutan chujan cheni kyenche tagle munse champeyan la tu Seden kienki kien rap özerki Tagle timung mun parap sene Katam tenche shuluk tok bayi Lodge popeng awa sel tous. Donc, bon après-midi à tout le monde, ici et en ligne.
So we will continue where we left off yesterday with our study of the Abhidharmakosha. As a reminder of the structure, the outline, we picked up at the third stanza, which is the presentation of the purpose, which presents the purpose of the text, which Sylvain shared with us. And then we went into the explanation of the body of the text in and of itself, with a definition of this body, the contents of this treatise, with a brief presentation, an explanation on dissociated from factors for descent. There was also a concise presentation followed by a particular explanation of the unconditioned. Unconditioned phenomena are threefold. These are space, cessation by way of examination, and cessation without the means of examination. Yesterday we discussed space and cessation by way of examination, and now we'll continue with cessation without the means of examination. This brings us to the sixth stanza, lines 3 and 4. Which reads, that which definitively prevents future birth, future in brackets, is a different cessation, not by way of examination. In order to define this phenomenon, this unconditioned phenomenon, we started looking at the fact that the cessation by way of examination definitively prevents a conditioned phenomenon from appearing again in the future. Sort of paraphrasing the stanza. In other words, it is every permanent phenomenon that definitively obstructs the birth of a conditioned phenomenon. Cease. This phenomenon will remain in cessation. It will not reappear in the future. It will become more clear with examples that we have to share. What's presented concerning this cessation without the means of examination is that it can be obtained in two ways. There are two ways by which we can obtain cessation without the means of examination. The first is the incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. And the second is the presence of a contrary or opposite factor. Once again, the second is the presence of an opposite or contrary factor. We will go into each of these two ways with an example. So first, to illustrate cessation without the means of examination, obtained on the basis of incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. We can consider the following example. A situation. No, before I turn around, the bird flies away. Then I turn around, and at this moment, if we take the phenomenon, moment of visual consciousness of the crow, well, the crow has flown away. So this phenomenon, moment of visual consciousness of the crow, will not appear. The causes and conditions for its appearance are not gathered. So this moment of visual consciousness of the crow does not appear, and according to the Vaibhashika view, we say that not only does it not appear, but at this moment there is a cessation without the means of examination that is obtained, which is a permanent phenomenon that makes it that this phenomenon remains in cessation. It will not appear in the future. That may have gone a bit quick. Is it okay? It seems okay. The phenomenon that could have been produced was not produced due to the incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. And this brings about obtaining of a cessation without the means of examination. Khelzang Puntso, at this moment, we must have been looking doubtful. At that point, he said, don't think about it too much. In brief, if we just define it, it's a permanent phenomenon that does not let a certain conditioned phenomenon appear now or in the future. So once again, keep it in mind, this is the Vaibhashika point of view. This is how the Vaibhashika define this. For them, this cessation is a phenomenon that has a substance, it has a function, and this function, this effect, is to prevent the future appearance of a conditioned phenomenon. The coming together of the causes and conditions is incomplete. This potential cannot be fulfilled, and so there is a cessation that prevents its appearance. Khelzang Puntso tells us again, the subtle thing here is that there is a cessation. The conditions have not come together, and not only have they not come together, which means that this thing has ceased, but it will remain in cessation. It abides in cessation due to this obtaining out the means of examination. We saw that there were two ways to obtain this type of cessation. We illustrated the first case here, the incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. And now we will look at the second case, which is that of the presence of an opposite or contrary factor. Here, we will consider the example of the state level patience on the path of junction. This will all be detailed later on in the path, on in a further chapter on the path. In this path of junction, there are 4 stages. The stage called heat, then summit, then patience, and then supreme worldly virtue. This is the path of junction is the path that precedes the path of vision or seeing. When a practitioner reaches the stage called patience, what's explained is that at this stage, patience, on the path of junction, there is the appearance of a contrary factor. From the moment that the practitioner reaches this stage, they will no longer be born in the lower realms. Based on stage patience, there is a contrary factor to rebirth in the lower realms that is born. And it is based on this contrary factor that here we obtain a cessation without the means of examination. Here, it's not because the conditions have not come together, it's because even if the conditions were to come together, there is a contrary factor that prevents this phenomenon from appearing. So, what prevents the appearance of this conditioned phenomenon is this cessation without the means of examination. To restate it, to conclude, through the example of the crow, concerning a moment of visual consciousness of a crow that is not produced, we looked at cessation without the means of examination that is obtained based on the incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. And with the example of the stage patience on the path of junction, we looked at cessation without the means of examination that is obtained based on the presence of a contrary factor that prevents, in this case, birth in the lower realms. And what we can note is that there is no difference, definitively, between these two cessations. Both are cessations without the means of examination. It's just that the way that they are obtained is different. This concludes the presentation of unconditioned phenomena. This also concludes the presentation of this introductory part that we were looking at, which defines the body or the contents of the treatise. Are there questions on this subject? Okay. Microphone for questions. Maybe the question's not appropriate, but just the description, the example. So there's focus on the vase. The bird flies away. The bird, at the moment that the bird flies away, is it the bird flying away that causes us to turn around? A good question. Well, I wanted to follow the way the example was given, but we talked about this a lot, and there are some elements in the example that can kind of cause confusion, because later on we saw other examples, and if I kind of look at the essential points of all of the questions that were asked on this subject, it really concerns the incomplete coming together of causes and conditions. If we go into detail concerning this example, if I explain what I understand, if we look at the object, well, we'll see later what causes are necessary for a moment of visual consciousness to be produced. So the cessation is already there, but the cessation that we were analyzing is the following moment. And in the following moment, if the bird doesn't fly away, then there is the object faculty preceding condition. But here, in that case, the condition that's missing is not the faculty, it's the object, but there is a condition that's missing. So here, the condition that's missing is no longer the faculty that's looking, but the object that isn't present anymore. So if we go into the details of this example, we can see that in fact there are two cessations. A cessation when we're looking at the vase, and then the cessation when we have turned around. But it seems we're focusing more on the second cessation, and the point is that we're really focusing on one moment. At one moment, there can't be two visual consciousnesses. So if a particular visual consciousness was not produced, then it won't come back. And if the bird comes back, it'll be another moment of visual consciousness of bird, but not the one of the moment where the bird was there and then flew away after. It's the same bird. I think we already had this example talking about the aggregates. So I'm still a bit dubious. I see the vase and everything that's behind me. I don't perceive it. So, okay, the causes and conditions don't come together for this moment of visual consciousness to be produced. But if I had a friend who has said, oh, there was a bird, you didn't see it, oh, okay, but they did. But so then, what? On the other side of the planet, there are also lots of phenomena that are produced, but I'm not there, so the conditions for me to have a moment of visual consciousness are not there. So is it just the fact that the bird was outside of my field of awareness? In fact, there's an infinity of cessations without the means of cessation that are produced in every moment. It's as though we try to consider a phenomenon, a moment of visual consciousness that could be produced at a future moment. And when we come to this moment, in fact, there is a whole panel of possibilities of visual consciousnesses that could be produced. But then at this moment, there's only one that will be produced. And all of the other potential visual moments of visual consciousness cease. It's as though they could have potentially been produced, but since they are not produced because we are focused on a single object, at that moment, all of the other possibilities cease and they will never be produced. They could have been produced, but they're not. So all of this is connected with the explanations of how the Vaibhashika consider the 3 times. It's not the moment necessarily to get into it here, but it will come up later. This was evoked a bit in the presentation of the Vaibhashika view, the way that they consider the 3 times. So this concerns all phenomena that I don't see, not just the crow, but every phenomenon that I don't perceive also has a cessation in the same way. Sylvestre clarifies, no, it's only those that we could potentially see. For example, those that are in China, well, tomorrow at the same time, I won't be in China, so those aren't involved. A very short question concerning vocabulary. Why are we talking about cessation of a phenomenon that has never existed? For something to cease, it has to have been produced. For example, in the case of the vision of the bird, okay, so why are we talking about cessation of a phenomenon that has not existed? Indeed, this is related to the way that the Vaibhashika considered the 3 times, it seems. Last time, in October, when Sylvestre and Alexandra presented the Vaibhashika view, among the 10 points of the basis of the Vaibhashika view, there is the way that the Vaibhashika consider the existence of the 3 times. They believe that the 3 times have substantial existence. In this present moment, right now, here, there's only the present moment that is manifest, but there's also the presence of past and future that are present here. The example that's given is we can imagine 3 people in the waiting room of a doctor's office. There's the doctor's office, and then in the waiting room, there are 3 people. The first person goes into the doctor's office, and then this person comes back. Then the second person goes in the doctor's office, and when the second person is in the doctor's office, the first, the one who already went in, and the one who will go in after, the third who will go in after the second person, they're still present in the waiting room. So that's the example that's given to explain that for the Vaibhashika, the 3 times are always present. They have a certain existence, even if they're not manifest. And this is really specific to the Vaibhashika view, and not all schools of thought accept this. And for the Vaibhashika, there are also really phenomena that exist externally. So with the example of the crow, even though the crow wasn't phenomena that are not manifest, that have not manifested, they remain in the background, and the Vaibhashika attribute them with this substance. What has not manifested remains dormant in a way. And so that's what you meant by the remark that cessations are being produced constantly. Yes. The other example is tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, I'll wake up, I'll open my eyes, I'll turn on the light, and the moment when I turn on the light, my visual consciousness will focus on, for example, on the color blue. If I have a blue sweater on a chair, then at the moment that I turn on the light, my visual consciousness will focus on the blue sweater. But it could have focused on the yellow lamp, or a wood-colored piece of furniture. And so tomorrow morning, there's a whole bunch of different possibilities for a first moment of visual consciousness that will manifest when I wake up. But in the moment itself, only one will be produced. And this, we cannot know in advance which it is. The causes. I was wondering if this is the same thing for someone who's just died, because the presence of the person is very strong. I'm sorry, I don't understand the example. From the point of view of cessation. the person is dead, has just died, then in this case, are we also talking about this cessation? Am I completely lost here? I mean, concerning those who don't see them anymore? No, but they're there, but they're dead. But their presence isn't there anymore. Their life isn't there anymore. Or there's no more life. We consider death, well, we're formatted Abhidharmakosha, so beyond considerations of life and death, etc., we're going to reflect on things like, okay, a moment of visual consciousness, but what's a person? A person is a conditioning phenomenon. Really, it's like taking tweezers and pulling it all apart into its individual pieces. And so when you ask me, well, what about a person when they die? I am having a hard time figuring out what aspect of the person or how to consider the person. So yeah, this is just to say that, through our studies, there's a particular way of looking at things. And I guess that's my way of explaining that I'm having trouble figuring out how to understand or how to consider your question. It's a team effort. So I'll share what was said. Cessation is obtained, and when cessation arises, we obtain the cessation within the continuity, our own personal continuity. When a being stops existing, their continuity stops, and I don't obtain anything in relation to that. So concerning the definition, I don't know how to answer this question. There are ideas here, but I think the thing that's certain is we have kind of a first idea about cessation without the means of examination, but concerning the way that beings abide in the world and the way that they die, the way that they experience bardo. This is explained in the 3rd chapter, and so we'll perhaps have the opportunity to reflect together at that point in time. Another question? Okay, so just to ask if I understood correctly, coming back to the crow, I understood that this cessation is among the phenomena dissociated from factors for descent. So if the crow or another phenomenon would have been susceptible to provoking a bunch of afflictive obscurations in me, then in this case, where my visual consciousness does not perceive the object in question, then there cannot be the production of afflictive obscurations. Is it in this sense that this is dissociated from factors for descent? No, it's not about the crow. What we saw is that phenomena that are dissociated from factors for descent are the truth of the path, space, and the 2 cessations. The unconditioned, the last 3 are the unconditioned phenomena. They are dissociated from factors for descent because they are unconditioned. If these are phenomena dissociated from factors for descent, then afflictive obscurations cannot arise on their basis. Isn't that right? Just to review the definition, a phenomenon dissociated from factors for descent is a phenomenon based on which, by focus or association, afflictive obscurations, factors for descent, are not susceptible to being produced. So concerning this cessation, without these dissociated from factors for descent, then this is a phenomenon based on which factors for descent are not susceptible to developing by way of focus or association. So, but since I don't see the crow, I can't develop afflictive obscurations based on it. And the cessation is in this way, this cessation is dissociated from factors for descent. No, this cessation isn't connected to liberation from afflictive obscurations. The thing about the moment of the crow is that the one behind us, we may not see it if we're focused on something else, but it could fly away and land on a branch, and then we won't see it in that moment, but we'll see it on the branch. And if we don't like crows, then we'll have a negative reaction at this moment. So we're not talking about the cessation of afflictive obscurations. The cessation of afflictive obscurations is the cessation by way of examination, where we give up the obscurations. Here we're talking about cessation, but it's not the same one. Okay, fine, but still, based on this cessation, this moment won't be produced. And okay, I can develop afflictive obscurations in a future moment, but I don't understand why this cessation is dissociated from factors for descent. When you say that you won't get upset because you don't see the crow, the object of your anger is still the crow. We have to focus on the phenomenon that is a substance, in other words, a cessation, which makes it that another phenomenon that then is not produced. We're not focused on the phenomenon that isn't produced. In fact, it's the absence of this phenomenon that is in question. My consciousness is focused on another object. But still, I can't develop the emotions toward the crow at that moment if I don't see it. Indeed, but there is obtaining of afflictive obscurations. The desire attachment, for example, is present in your continuity. Sure, but this specific moment is free of factors for descent. No, but it's not the moment that is free of factors for descent. But this crow that's present at this moment is free from factors for descent. And this moment won't be produced. It will never be produced again, even if I see other crows in my life. It's the dissociated from factors for descent that's bugging me. In my vision, since I don't see the crow, then I can't develop phenomena associated with factors for descent. The crow, for me, doesn't exist. So in this stage of the conversation, I find it interesting, but at a certain point, we can indefinitely dig into it. The exercise of this presentation is to repeat what we received. We can answer questions remaining in the framework of what we received. Of course, we've thought a lot about it. We have ideas, we have considerations about these questions, but since we aren't great experts on the Abhidharma, discussing in this way, in fact, we can really wind up with a lot of mistakes, unfortunately. So maybe we can just continue with the text, hold on to your questions, come back to what we've said, more specifically to what Khelzang Puntso told us, write down your questions, think about them. And just a reminder, what Khelzang Puntso said to us at this point was, it's not necessary to reflect on it too much here. Just remember that something has ceased here because the conditions did not come together, and it will not be produced again. And so really he said that and cut off all of the questions, and that's not to say that you guys shouldn't reflect on your own or even together, but it seems better not to continue here, because what we might say could be filled with errors. In any case, in terms of what beings experience and in terms of the afflictive obscurations in the chapters that are coming, there's a lot of information that you can glean and a lot of things to reflect on. It's my turn. Okay. So we concluded this preliminary part, and now we will begin. In fact, we'll begin the first chapter. If you look at the outline, and concerning the outline, and for those who are listening in other languages besides French, there are people online in Germany, maybe in the United States, other English-speaking countries. There's also Spanish speakers listening. Unfortunately, we can't share the Karmapa, the ninth Karmapa's plan outline with you in other languages yet, because we haven't had time to translate it. We decided to share this outline with you really last minute, and as we only have this outline in French for the moment, it's something that you'll receive. It's not guaranteed that it'll be ready during this session, but for the next session of the curriculum, the text of the outline should be available in English, German, and Spanish, and perhaps it will be available maybe in the next few days of this session, or following up this session. It'll be possible to have the outline in the other languages. We're doing our best. Note from the translator. So to come back to the outline, there is a part that's in gray, which begins with a detailed explanation of the secondary aspects of the treatise. This explains the 8 chapters that make up the Abhidharmakosha. This part, what's contained in this part of the Karmapa's outline, only belongs to the Karmapa. In other words, Vasubandhu didn't compose any stanzas concerning this part of the outline, so we didn't receive any explanations on this part. This part of the outline seems to be specifically relative to the ninth Karmapa and the way that he structured his commentary. Vasubandhu didn't compose any stanzas in the root text in relation to this part of the outline, the structure that's given. So we grade them out. What we can simply say is that there's a point called the presentation of the meaning of each domain, and he cites the title of each chapter that makes up the text, that makes up Vasubandhu's text, the Abhidharmakosha. Sorry for all the paper noises. They're stapled weird. I'd just like to share the titles of the chapters with you because we did share them with you in October. The first title is chapter, The Presentation of the Dhatus. The second chapter is the presentation of the governing faculties. The third chapter is the presentation of the world. The fourth chapter is the presentation of acts or actions, karma. The fifth chapter is the presentation of afflictive obscurations. The sixth is the presentation of the paths and the individuals. The seventh is the presentation of primordial knowledge. And the eighth is the presentation of meditative absorptions or even engagements. No, meditative absorptions. And perhaps it's useful to regularly remind ourselves of the 8 chapters that make up the text because it helps us remember the structure of the text. And if we remember the titles of the chapters, it means that we know what is contained within the Abhidharmakosha. Even if we don't have the details yet, it's already given. The meaning of the chapter on the presentation of the Dhatus. Ninth Karmapa is going to explain the meaning of the chapter of the Abhidharmakosha on the presentation of the Dhatus. In other words, the first chapter. So we'll begin the first chapter. The first point is explanation of the reference text. There are 4 parts. The definition of conditioned, the definition of the aggregates, dhatus, and ayatanas, the presentation of the fact that phenomena, the 3 phenomena contain everything, and fourth and last, the complete classification of the dhatus. These 4 parts are the 4 primary parts that make up this first chapter. So we'll begin after having seen that phenomena associated with and dissociated from factors for descent. Now we will look at the theme of conditioned phenomena. We will go into the point that defines conditioned phenomena. Khelzang Puntso began by giving the definition. Conditioned, what is conditioned is what is born from causes and conditions. The conditioned is what is born from causes and conditions. That's the definition. Due to. So this brings us to the first 2 lines of stanza 7. These first 2 lines read, These conditioned phenomena are also the 5 aggregates, matter, etc. So we can name them, since the root text does not name them all immediately. The first aggregate, the aggregate of matter. The second is the aggregate of sensation. The third is the aggregate of distinction. The fourth is the aggregate of conditioning phenomena. And the fifth is the aggregate of consciousness. All conditioned phenomena are included in these 5 aggregates. This means that the unconditioned phenomena, the 3 unconditioned phenomena that we spoke of, are not included here. Conditioned phenomena are precisely this, the 5 aggregates. Here, for the moment, we're looking at the presentation of the definition of conditioned phenomena. We'll get into the details of the 5 aggregates later on. For now, we are looking at this term conditioned. So now we'll continue in the root text, and we'll see that the 2 following lines of stanza 7, lines 3 and 4, concern designations, nomenclature given to conditioned phenomena. These following 2 lines will present the different ways that we talk about these conditioned phenomena. This corresponds to the point 112, synonyms of conditioned. The root text says, stanza 7, lines 3 and 4, these last are temporal and basis for speech, associated with definitive emancipation, endowed with a basis. Phenomena are temporal. It's okay, not too fast. What does this mean? They are temporal. It means they are part of a continuity that continues on and on. Khelzang Puntso said, these conditioned phenomena went, they go, and they will go. And it is in this way that they are designated as being temporal. They are part of a continuity that continues on and on, continues continuously. The second designation, these conditioned phenomena are basis for speech. What does this mean? It means that these conditioned phenomena are the basis on which we will place various names or words, titles. For example, looking at this vase, I could say this vase is impermanent. It is matter. My visual consciousness of this vase or of these flowers is consciousness. All of these conditioned phenomena are what we will establish speech based on. Based on these conditioned phenomena, we can establish speech. Those are the first two designations, temporal and basis for speech. Now the third designation, these conditioned phenomena are associated with definitive emancipation. Definitive emancipation is a synonym of liberation. We could say these conditioned phenomena are associated with liberation. And here we can ask ourselves a question: what do we liberate ourselves from? What do we become emancipated from? In fact, we liberate ourselves from the five aggregates. We liberate ourselves from conditioned phenomena. It is because we liberate ourselves from conditioned phenomena that these conditioned phenomena are associated with liberation or emancipation. The fourth designation, these conditioned phenomena are endowed with a basis. What does this mean? This means that conditioned phenomena, the aggregates, appear based on causes. If there are no causes, phenomena do not appear. Conditioned phenomena do not appear. Endowed with a basis means they are endowed with a cause. Without causes, there are no conditioned phenomena. Khelzang Puntso told us that these last two lines of stanza 7 present the different designations concerning conditioned phenomena. And these different designations, they're found in certain circumstances. In certain cases, who talk about conditioned phenomena will use the term temporal. In other cases, will use basis for discourse, for speech, or associated with definitive emancipation, or endowed with a basis. These are all synonyms that we use to talk about conditioned phenomena. These designations refer to conditioned phenomena equally as much as they refer to the five aggregates, because these are equivalent. For conditioned phenomena, and now Alexandra will explain the particular names for conditioned phenomena associated with factors for descent. In other words, these names do not concern the truth of the path. This brings us to stanza 8. As we already had some question and answer, maybe let's take a short meditative break before we continue. the following stanza. As Sylvain indicated, in this stanza we'll see an explanation of synonyms, but here synonyms that are particular to what is associated with factors for descent, conditioned phenomena associated with factors for descent. The stanza reads, these phenomena associated with factors for descent. So we'll go into detail on each of these terms. For the first, we can see that phenomena associated with factors for descent are also called aggregates of perpetuation. Just something to take into account. We say phenomena associated with factors for descent, and then in the explanation concerning the translation, there are some specific terms in Tibetan. In the first term, there's a note there's a translator's note about a translator's note. There are certain terms in Tibetan that are trickier than others to translate, and so they're terms that have multiple facets. The term that is translated, the translator also used aggregates associated with what grasps them intimately. And then there are also aggregates associated with what perpetuates them. They're not two synonyms in the list of synonyms. They're different translations of the same term. So phenomena associated with factors for descent are called aggregates associated with what grasps them intimately, or aggregates associated with what perpetuates them. The important thing here is to understand why. Why are they called intimately grasped or of perpetuation? What perpetuates them? The explanation is that when we talk about this intimately grasped, what perpetuates, this refers to the acts and afflictive obscurations. So, more definitive way, as phenomena associated with factors for descent appear based on actions and afflictive obscurations, and acts and afflictive obscurations are what grasp intimately or what perpetuate, we call them aggregates associated to what intimately grasps them, or aggregates associated with what perpetuates them. The commentary in the expression apple of the tree, the apple is the fruit and the tree is the cause. In the same way, when we talk about aggregates associated with what intimately grasps them or what perpetuates them, the aggregates are the fruit of, or associated with, what intimately grasps them or what perpetuates them, which is the cause. Given that acts and afflictive obscurations are the cause of the aggregates. So phenomena associated with factors for descent are aggregates of perpetuation. They are also said to be associated with battle. associated with battle means that based on these phenomena associated with factors for descent, there are different types of suffering that appear. Here, the term battle refers to fighting. How do we, as we know, combat harms us and harms others. Harm appears based on this. In the same way, based on phenomena associated with factors for descent, different types of suffering appear. And so they are called, phenomena associated with factors for descent, are said to be associated with battle. Another synonym is suffering and origin of all suffering. Here it's fairly clear. Khelzang Puntso didn't add much. We can simply say that phenomena associated with factors for descent are designated as being suffering, origin of all suffering. They are both suffering and the origin of all suffering. The following synonym is relying on destruction. This refers to the fact that phenomena associated with factors for descent never remain in a permanent way. They are destroyed, they cease in every moment. This is why we say that they rely on destruction. The second to last term is supports of the views. Why are they said to be supports of the views? These phenomena associated with factors for descent. So first we can remember what the views in question are. Khelzang Puntso introduced us to this notion of the views that will cover following chapters and may have already considered in the Kejuk. Here this concerns the view of what did we call it? Destructible whole, view that grasps extremes, false view, view that grasps a view as supreme, and view that grasps conduct or asceticism as supreme. Here, what we can see is that phenomena associated with factors for descent are the support for these views. They are what these views apply to. These 5 views apply themselves to phenomena associated with factors for descent. The 7th and last term is becoming. They are also becoming. Why becoming? Here, Khelzang Puntso explains that we have aggregates, and this is true for any phenomenon. We can think about the aggregates of an individual, but we can also think of aggregates other than those of an individual. These aggregates are part of a continuity that has been going on since beginningless time, and concerning this continuity, each moment produces the following moment, which produces the following moment, etc., etc. These moments succeed each other in this way since beginningless time all the way up through now. These phenomena associated with factors for descent are part of a continuity that has lasted up through now continues. And this is why we call them becoming. This refers to something that is part of a continual, uninterrupted process. To come back to the aggregates of the individual, Khelzang Puntso takes himself as an example. He said, we have been wandering in the three realms of samsara since beginningless time. Why am I called becoming? Because I can't find a starting point to my wandering in samsara. I can't say when this began. And if we had to count the number of lives that we have had in samsara, and if we removed one drop of water from the ocean for each lifetime we counted, we would have emptied the ocean before we even got close to counting them all up. If we had to make a mountain of bones of all of our bodies from beginningless time, then this pile of bones would be higher than Mount Meru. This is concerning the term becoming. So in conclusion, we have covered the 7 designations here. And we see that these designations are applied to conditioned phenomena. And in particular, this is the particular explanation of phenomena, conditioned phenomena associated with factors for descent. Here we can remember that among conditioned phenomena, there's one that's not associated with factors for descent, the truth of the path, and that the phenomena of the truth of the path cannot be called by these 7 designations. As we saw previous day, Khelzang Puntso shared this sentence with us again. Phenomena associated with factors for descent are all conditioned, but conditioned phenomena are not all associated with factors for descent, like the truth of the path, or specifically the truth of the path. This concludes the definition of the conditioned. It's a bit late to continue with the next part, so we'll do that tomorrow. I'd just like to share something before we conclude. Something to know. It's true for this text, but also true for other texts. Not to say that I've studied so many texts, but don't worry too much when new ideas appear that seem very obscure or we don't understand them. Yesterday we talked about the 5 classes of things to abandon. In fact, it's like that all the way along the text. There are always new ideas, especially in the beginning, because the first 2 chapters give a really general presentation of phenomena, both associated with and dissociated from factors for descent. The first 2 chapters have a lot of new ideas. And then in the following chapters, kind of from the... If there's one little question, could be possible. Thank you for everything you're explaining. The text, the Abhidharmakosha, it's that one, that's the one. In fact, the Vaibhashika, the whole text is connected with the Vaibhashika. It's the whole text, right? Yes, this is the presentation of the established conclusions from the established conclusions of the Vaibhashika school that are presented in this text. As we saw, there are those little particles of disagreement where the Sautrantika don't accept or agree. But there are also many things in this text that are accepted by the Sautrantika. And the other schools, we don't talk about that. I'm not a specialist in the schools of thought, but the other schools of thought, in the Mahayana, etc., they develop their established conclusions based on this. They don't necessarily come to the same conclusions, but they develop them based on this. We find the same notions concerning the knowable phenomena. And personally, what I've studied most is the Abhidharmakosha, so I can't necessarily talk too much about the other schools of thought. We'll conclude. Sanamdi tamche zipani tonye nyepe chonam famchene kenkana chi bala chubayi sipe sone troa sho.